So we've got an opportunity now before lunch for a wrap-up panel, and hopefully there's some questions from the room. There's 2 microphones down the front. First people with those microphones get to ask the first questions, and please address them to one of our panel members. First question is always the hardest. Who's the bravest person in the room?
While we're waiting, I might ask a question.
There we go, the closest person to the microphone.
So Sydney, that idea of we thought about that a couple of times. Could we do a randomised trial? Could we randomise in healthcare, half the wards and say, forget policies, procedures, everything, just do good work, and the other half will keep you under the compliance regime and just see what happens? And my only problem is, I'd be a bit nervous if I was a patient.
Well, but actually, that experiment is already happening, and it's not even randomized. There is, as your results already show, that nobody cares about what policies, procedures, and guidelines are actually governing their work, and they don't know them. So the experiment is going on as we sit here, Jeremy, the whole time. It's already happening.
Very good. Down the front here.
Thank you very much. Jeff Ho from Optus. I have a question. I have a question for both Sydney and Jeffrey. But first of all, it's an observation.
No, we just want the question.
No, you've got to get the observation first.
We don't want your... There's no time.
There's no bell down here.
Ask for a slot next year.
I love you. You mentioned that there was an organisation that was conducting an experiment. And I happened to talk to Kevin last week, and I said, how's it going? And he said to me, well, we haven't got any definitive data as yet, but we have made a very, very important observation, that the people who complain most about the rules are now the ones complaining that the rules have been taken away. And I think the question I have is, have we reached a situation where the people in the workplace have become so indoctrinated to using the rules that they can't live without them?
Sydney will have a better answer than this, but in my field, the reality is once clinicians become specialists or seasoned general practitioners, if we just use medicine as an example, they really don't have recourse to the rules. They much more flex and adjust and adapt to the particular patient in front of them. We did a big study and it showed that clinicians probably use guidelines, if they vaguely remember them, applied in about 57% of cases that are in front of them, and even then not fully. So I'm not sure if people are following the rules in my field, in healthcare, but you'll have a better answer to that.
Well, I think we should wait for the answer, at least from one of the experiments that we're doing, and it's a very good question, and have the empirical results. But my prediction is, look, people. All human relationships and human work is always rule-based. There's always rules. People make up rules even if you take everything away. I think Jeffrey's point was the distance between those who create the rules and those who actually do the work has grown dramatically as we have encrusted bureaucracies around most operations. I would predict that if we take everything out and say, don't hurt anyone, rules will emerge. New rules, new standards, new practices will emerge around which people congeal. To answer the question about are people so browbeaten to have no other choice but to follow the rules, I don't think that we have given many of our operations enough time for them to recover from that regime. BHP Billiton has tried this really nicely up in North Queensland in one of their mines, saying you can actually decide for yourself whether you want to wear a hard hat or not. It's your judgment, right? We're not going to make a rule about that. I think it's an awesome experiment, right? But you have to give it time, because immediately after that was done, of course, there's guys going to say, well, what am I going to wear on my head then, right? Because they've been acculturated to doing that and see no reasonable alternative outside of that rule. Let's give it some time. Let's let the results come in and talk about that next year.
Thank you very much.
Leo Rashina from RMIT. I've always had a contention that the people at the blunt end shouldn't be the sole arbiters of rules, but in fact the people at the sharp end should actually be a lot more involved in developing the rules, which automatically then, if you try to put in a rule that doesn't make sense, the people at the sharp end says, this is not the way we do things down here. On the other hand, the people at the blunt end can actually then put some judgment as to whether that rule is in fact safe or not, or might be other unintended consequences. In the electricity industry, that was often the case that we said, look, we don't want you to experiment with electricity, but if you come up with a better way of doing things, bring it up, we'll work it through, and if it does make sense, then we'll put it in place. And I think that goes a long way to shortening the distance between work as imagined and work as done, because you have both parties actually involved in developing the rules.
I think we're taking that as a comment.